Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. Today, like every year, I'm going to show you 5 of my favorite products that I have been using this year. Let's start with the big one. This would be my Factor Ostro Gravel frame set. Now, I have quite a varied history with gravel bikes. I started riding off-road with different cyclocross bikes. I had an entry-level one first, then a track boon when I raced cyclocross, and because of the terrain that I have nearby, I always liked the idea of going off-road on a drop bar bike, but somehow I never really got the bike that I really wanted. One of those that I really wanted to try out was the open up frame set that I had last year, but to be honest, this was a bit of a disappointment. It didn't really perform like I wanted to. And then I had the opportunity to have Factor Bikes as my main sponsor for this year, and because of that I got myself an LS gravel race bike, and that finally started to tick all the boxes. It was a racy fit, it had nimble handling, all the stiffness that you want, and it was just a fast gravel race bike, exactly like I wanted. The only thing really that I was lacking in that design is the focus on aerodynamics, because these are still tremendously important when racing or just riding on gravel. And in my mind I had this idea of the perfect gravel bike, and it was just basically an aero road bike that could fit wider tires to go off-road, and maybe they have been reading my mind, I don't know, but this autumn they have released the Ostro Gravel, which is exactly that bike. So immediately I felt the need to get this bike. And before you say that I'm telling you all this because I'm sponsored by this brand, as I said in other videos already, I get the road bike from them, I get the time trial bike from them, but both gravel bikes I bought with my own money because I wanted to have them, and this was no exception. So I got this bike in late October, and after building it up and riding it for a couple of hours, I just fell in love with it really. It's the best gravel bike I had, and maybe it's specific to me, but it's exactly the bike that I always wanted to have. I'm not going to talk about all the features of this bike because it's not within the scope of this video, but if you want to know more, then I have a detailed first look video on the channel, which we'll link below. The second product that really improved my season was another thing that I had in my mind for a long time, and Wahoo decided to make that. That is the Kickr Rollr indoor trainer, or well, for me it is not really an indoor trainer, it's more of a tool because I use it for predominantly bike and race warm-ups. And the main reason I wanted something like this is if you race with disc brake bikes, the last thing you want really is to install and remove your wheels 2 minutes before the start of a race, and with a Kickr Rollr you can warm up in a perfectly normal fashion without doing that. And the comfort of, well, being stationary, you don't need to go around at the race venue trying to find a place to warm up, etc. So it's an extremely practical tool for that. And as I had it during the year, I started using it for various things. For example, it's a great tool for bike fitting or just working on your bike in general. So I really highly rate that. And yes, it's really quite expensive for what it is, but for me at least it's definitely worth it because it has many uses, as I said already. So again, I don't really want to go in depth with this. We again have a separate video where I talk about this and all of these features, so also we'll link that down below. The third product that came along during this year is the Fabric Line S saddle. Now, first thing, I finally learned its name because I've been using it for a while without any idea of that. And just to give you a quick background on this, I first started using fabric saddles when I built up my first Ostro VAM road bike from Factor. And previously I was using saddles from, you know, the brand with the big S, but since I had a Factor bike, I no longer wanted to use products from that brand if not really necessary. So I just went to the site of one of my suppliers and chose a random saddle, which happened to be this one. It looked like the Power saddle, more or less, in terms of shape, so I decided to give it a go, and I liked it so much that I haven't stopped using it ever since. I also started stocking it in the store, and the customers also love it. So what are the features of this saddle? Well, it's basically a modern design short nose saddle with a widened profile at the back. Now, for some people, admittedly, it is too wide at the back, but it has two versions to remedy that. So this is a 142 that basically everyone would use, and there's a 155, which I think is really appropriate more or less for female riders with wider hips, wider pelvis. It uses a pretty soft closed cell foam, so that's one of the reasons why it's very comfortable for many riders, and it has a pressure relief channel, of course. But the thing I like about it is that, unlike other saddles, the base is actually full, so there's no cutout. So if you ride in wet conditions or off-road, your bum doesn't get wet and dirty, so that's nice. And yeah, it's kind of an unassuming design, but it's extremely comfortable and durable. It just works really. The base is plastic, so nothing fancy in there, and you can have it with 3 rail options. This is the carbon one that I use, but even this one is pretty damn affordable at around, well, half the price of the other high-end options. Then you have a titanium rail version and a steel rail version, which basically has the same cover, same base. It's just a tiny bit heavier for a fraction of the price again. So it's a good value, very comfortable, reasonably lightweight, just works great. So definitely the recommendation from me is out there on this Line S saddle from Fabric. Next up, we have this little thing here, and you might be wondering what that is, particularly if you're not into the off-road disciplines of cycling. Well, this year, as I said in a couple of videos already, I transitioned from riding clincher tires with latex tubes to tubeless systems, just because I was curious about the latest generations of the tubeless tires from the main brands, and I have to say that these, unlike the previous ones, work pretty damn great. And one addition that I have discovered during, well, the early parts of this year are foam inserts for the tires. The reason I started using a foam insert is because when I had my first, well, gravel bike this season, the Open Up, I only had road wheels for it and I didn't want to ruin them, so I thought that maybe they would need some extra protection. And then again, as I was browsing through the catalog of one of my suppliers, I came across these Tubolight inserts, and I then compared them to various brands, and these are in fact the lightest tire insert that you can find for road tires. And also, it's not just a regular round section, it has kind of a neat design. But first, let me tell you, why do you actually need a tire insert? Well, for me, as I said, the most important factor was to protect the wheel from impact damage when riding off-road, because it was not really a wheel designed for riding off-road. And the same thing can be applied, well, to regular gravel wheels. I think if you plan to race gravel, it's really a must-have, because there you ride at high speeds in a pack, you don't really see what's out there in front of you, you can't really pick your line because you're in a bunch, so if you hit something, you might slash your tire, even crack your wheel, and if you're using a tire insert, the likelihood of that happening is arguably much less. And the same thing can be said for road use. However, it's not the main reason I use it for there, because now I have it on all of my wheels except for the ones I use for time trialing. On the road, the main advantage for me, as we have demonstrated in the previous winter tips video, is the fact that even when your tire is completely flat, you can still ride this safely. So if you puncture in the middle of a descent, you're not going to crash, or at least you're much less likely to do so. And even if you do puncture, you can still limp back home in relative safety without ruining your tires or your wheels. And because of this, I don't really need to carry a saddle pack with me anymore, because I'm covered with this add-on safety feature. So why is this particular model from Tubolight unique? Well, as I said, it's mainly down to the shape. So if you look at it and its section, basically there's a round part with two ridges that goes into the channel of the rim. And the reason why this is important is that it makes it pretty easy to fit, really, because it just stays there. And also when you inflate the tire, it then basically stretches or pushes down against the bead of the tire, and it just makes it a lot harder to dislodge even when the tire is flat. So it's an extra safety feature. And then if you look at the other side, it has this ridge on the top, and this gives you that impact protection that saves your wheel and tire when hitting a pothole, etc. I got a couple of questions regarding this and the impact on rolling resistance. Well, that's negligible basically. So as I said, I don't use it on my time trial wheels because there is some couple tenths of a watts here and there, but other than that, I think the advantages really outweigh this. So yeah, another great product in my book. As I said, good protection, very lightweight, easy to fit, and it just gives you the peace of mind. So for gravel, I think that's the absolute minimum that you have to use this. For road, it's pretty good as well. And a lot of mountain bikers use these nowadays too. So really great product all around. For the final product, we are sticking with the tires. Now, as I said, I tried a couple of the new generation road tubeless race tires, and one of them that really sticks out in terms of popularity and performance above all else is the Conti GP 5000 STR. So most people tend to use that. It's a great tire. I had it myself, and also that's what most of my customers were asking for. But the thing is that during the year, the availability of these tires was quite poor. So I started to look into alternatives, and I think at around June, if I'm not mistaken, Michelin have released their Power Cup tire. And after a couple of initial tests, I looked into the data a little bit, and it turns out that in terms of rolling resistance, it's a pretty close match. In fact, I would say even 1-to-1 if you take into account some margin of error of the measurements. So I decided to go out and try these. And well, the first impressions were pretty good. The tire is nice, supple and grippy, perhaps even more so than the GP 5000. So I really like that, and I have been using it since. I've used the 25 and 28 mil versions. this year, and both of them are very good tires. One thing that is a bit of a quirk of these tires is the unusual shape, but I think that really helps with the cornering. So most tires, when you install them on a wide rim, they actually spread out, so they flatten out quite a bit, or at least that's the case with modern construction. Takes this into consideration, so you don't have an overly large and bulbous tire. But sometimes this doesn't really feel great in corners, and what Michelin have done, I don't know if this is actually intentional or just a byproduct of the design. This is perhaps the tallest tire in terms of the height that I've ever ridden, and that came apparent while fitting into different bikes where some arguably ran out of tire clearance because of this, but where it works pretty great. Why is it beneficial in my book to have extra height in the tire? First, it creates kind of a X shape at the tire, which is great for cornering, and I know this because motorcycle tires for the road, and also particularly the high performance ones, are also sharing this shape. Perhaps that's where Michelin are coming from, because they make very good motorcycle tires as well. So to make it short, it creates for a great cornering feel, and that's why I'm saying that it might actually be better than the GP5000 in the corners. One thing that is a bit of a limiting factor, and it is quite visible in this 10-wall version, is that the actual tread pattern is quite narrow compared to the whole area of the carcass. I don't know if on a bike you can actually lean it over quite all the way to the edge, but in terms of protection you have less rubber here, so you might get the chance of cuts, but I haven't really experienced that just yet. In fact, based on the bicycle rolling resistance test, the puncture resistance again is slightly higher than with the GP5000 STR. Durability is also great, ride feel is great, rolling resistance is great, so overall just a great tire, and I think it's really a worthy competitor to the ubiquitous Continental option. And I've been recommending this to my customers. Many of them use it and love it, same as I do, so I think it's a great choice. Just bear in mind that, yeah, because of the extra height of the tire, your frame doesn't really need the clearance. For example, my 28mm option fitted to the head wheels comes up around 28.5mm in terms of width, but for the height it's almost 30, so you have to keep that in mind. The 25mm width came up to around 28mm tall, so that's still pretty tall, and it makes for a kind of a different shape than what we're used to. One slight disadvantage that I've noticed compared to the Continentals is the fact that the sidewall is pretty porous, so it takes a lot of time and quite a lot of sealant to get them sealed up properly, so they hold air over a longer period of time. But that's not really a huge issue, you just need to keep that in mind for the first couple of days of riding it. So definitely something that can be mitigated over time. Okay, so these were my top 5 products that I have been using this year and have really improved my cycling and cycling experience, and I can thoroughly recommend all of them. I hope you have found this informational and useful. If you did, then let me know in the comments which product are you going to choose, and if you'd like to see more of this, then also don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because it helps us out in making more of these videos for you. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.